After 3 episodes released over a period of 3 months, the largest DLC expansion for Assassin's Creed Odyssey, The Fate of Atlantis, is now complete. And I think it's great. But why? Here's why. Hey squad, Sykes here, and a kindly reminder that if you enjoyed this video then please make sure you leave a like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications and leave a comment down below. So I'm going to break this video down into the different sections and give you my thoughts and views of all the different things that in my opinion make the Fate of Atlantis DLC so great. First we are going to start with, in my view, that the strongest part of the DLC is the world. Assassin's Creed Odyssey already had an incredibly large, deep and diverse world to explore in the main game, but things are taken up a notch when it comes to the Fate of Atlantis. The world in the Fate of Atlantis isn't a singular world, but multiple worlds. You get to explore Elysium, the Underworld and Atlantis over the space of the 3 episodes. Although none of the 3 maps are to the same massive size as the main game, what they may lack in scale they make up for in atmosphere and grandeur. With Ubisoft making the decision to blend the Assassin's Creed lore of the Isu with Greek mythology, you would expect godlike worlds in appearance and structure, and that is exactly what we were given. In Elysium, the scale changed to sweeping hills, flowing waterfalls, and great peaks reaching up into the clouds. The Underworld was a land of volcanic ash and rocks, smoke and fire, and barren of plant life, and Atlantis showcased the epitome of Isu architecture and technology, amongst the high walls and sprawling bridges of an expansive city. What is incredible about the Fate of Atlantis is that even though the worlds have been crafted to be unique to the theme of the individual episodes, they feel connected, being able to hold up well individually and collectively. What's also significant about the worlds are the different feelings the individual worlds provoke within the player. Elysium with its sheer beauty brings a feeling of contempt and awe in the sight of a perfect paradise. The Underworld provides a fear of feeling and dread in its gloom and darkness, and Atlantis a sense of power in the mastery of building structures and materials. One of my favourite parts of the whole DLC was the journey between markers on the map. The individual worlds were so magnificently crafted that I never got bored travelling through them, either on foot, horse or by boat. I also felt the world continuously had new environments to just stop, stare at and absorb. Now I did have one gripe with the worlds, and that is that their new scale and design at times make them very difficult to traverse. You were only able to cross rivers at certain built up points, or you had to unhorse, swim across and then horse up again. This grew slightly annoying at points where a safe crossing area wasn't exactly around the corner. The developers offered a new teleportation system in the form of Hermes Wings teleports. This saved time instead of scaling the vertical cliffs, but at times I felt I had to travel out of the way to find one instead of being able to head straight to the objective. Now moving on to stories and characters. What really brings the Fate of Atlantis to life is the narrative both within the individual episodes and collectively across all 3. The Fate of Atlantis follows on from the main game after the hero has entrusted Layla Hassan with the Staff of Hermes. Alethea, the Isu AI, then attempts to teach Layla how to wield the power of the staff by creating simulations of the past and experiencing the trials of the Keeper through the hero's eyes. The overarching narrative is that your hero has to complete 3 trials in order to learn how to wield the Staff of Hermes Trismegistus and unlock its full power. These 3 trials take you to the 3 different regions. Now, although your hero is travelling through these regions, with their focus being on the staff, it is what you have to do to get to that point which is where Fate of Atlantis excels. First up in Elysium, the hero is locked in a power struggle between the Isu ruler Persephone and a human rebellion led by Adonis. What makes the Fields of Elysium episode so great is that the hero is forced to play both sides of the conflict, which can lead to some hard-thought choices. Adonis and his rebellion wish to overthrow Persephone and her regime, whereas Persephone acts as a control freak who wishes to maintain order in Elysium in order to maintain a subjective, perfect paradise. Thrown into the mix are other Isu characters such as Hermes and Hecate, who have their own motivations, and suddenly you are thrust into the centre of various political schemes and backstabbing in order to gain power. The consequences of the hero's choices ultimately lead to a conflict for the power over Elysium. This then leads directly into the second episode, The Torment of Hades. After the hero forces their way into the underworld by removing a certain 3-headed dog, they are forced into the service of Hades himself. What is excellent about the narrative of The Torment of Hades is that the player and other characters encountered in the underworld must deal with the consequences of their actions. This leads to many intriguing secondary storylines with the likes of Phoebe, Brasidas and Elpenor, as well as encounters with others that met their ends in the main game. The Torment of Hades brings into question the morality of decisions that are made by you the player and other characters, and the impact they have on not only themselves but others, all while the hero continues to search for answers to wield the power of the staff. Hades takes up a different role than Persephone as more of a manipulator and an Isu playing devil's advocate, very fittingly. After completing all the tasks Hades had set the hero, a final encounter with the king of the underworld brings us into the guidance of Poseidon and on into Atlantis. The final episode, The Judgment of Atlantis, sees the hero tasked with becoming the Dikastes, essentially an enforcer of the rules and laws of Poseidon and keeper of peace between humans and Isu. The hero is constantly being challenged on choosing morality over logic, which brings in some really interesting storylines. The player has to navigate a different type of political landscape, this time deciding whether the advancement of technology and building the perfect city is worth the risk and the price of life and the freedoms of both the Isu and the humans. It brings in the old age question of whether sticking to old ways and traditions or throwing them to one side for a new way of thinking. Now I will leave that there as I don't want to spoil the ending of The Judgment of Atlantis, as it's pretty awesome, with a surprise character reappearing towards the end. All in all, I was incredibly impressed with the flowing narrative of all 3 episodes together. However, I did find issue with certain elements of the narrative in the individual episodes. Each episode offered around 8 to 10 hours worth of gameplay, but I felt a large amount of this was filled with needlessly long side quests and filler. Each episode started with a bang and new characters being introduced, and as the player I felt the early main quest and side quest missions were helping me to learn about the world and the new characters. The pacing of the first couple of hours of each episode was high, with story-driven quests coming thick and fast. However, I felt that the final third just lagged in pacing, with the player being asked to finish fetch quest style missions, clearing the map in order to progress the story. I felt these could have been made fewer or shorter to keep myself invested in the narrative all the way through the episode. Also at points I felt that the dialogue options either had a massive amount of weighting in that they completely changed the outcome of a story arc or an entire character, or they had literally no effect at all. I felt that there were multiple times where you had to choose between 2 options. I fought hard to pick my preferred choice, then after going back through loading, I found both choices had exactly the same outcome. It just felt a bit slack and needless. The other negative I had regarding the story and characters of the Fate of Atlantis revolved around meeting Brasidas in the underworld. I won't go into the ins and outs of Brasidas' story arc in the Torment of Hades, because I don't want to spoil it all, but I felt incredibly dissatisfied with how Brasidas' story finished. Not that I was expecting sunshine and rainbows for the bloke, after all, he was in the underworld, but his entire character arc was thrown at 180 and it did not compare to or reflect how awesome he was in the main game. This may have been a developer's thought process the whole time, but the whole thing left a bitter taste in my mouth. Again, just my opinion. Now finally onto the gameplay, and this is where the Fate of Atlantis really excels. The game of course keeps up the standard of the abilities based melee and range attacks of the main game, but adds an entirely new layer through the expansion. I had a fear that as my hero and my gear continued to level up, that I would be able to lay waste to hordes of enemies without hardly any effect and would completely become uninterested. Those fears were quickly shattered, however, by the expansion's focus on adrenaline. Now your concern as the player isn't just about protecting your health, but also protecting your adrenaline. This is because the Fate of Atlantis' new Isu Myrmidon enemy factions have enhanced abilities that can nerf your adrenaline for a period of time. This can prove troublesome, as with no adrenaline you are unable to use your abilities, which can make you temporarily vulnerable. This adds an extra layer of complexity to an already well-crafted combat system, which adds an extra layer of challenge. However, you aren't left without any new toys to fight these new bad guys. By finding Keeper's insights throughout the world and unlocking the power of the Staff of Hermes, you will gradually be able to advance more and more skills in your skill tree. Some of these advanced abilities are insane. With the balance of a longer cooldown period, these abilities can deal some serious damage. My personal favourite was the Ares Madness ability, which was absolutely nuts and got me out of some sticky situations at times. The other excellent addition to the expansion are the Colossi. These are really cool and powerful enemy factions, but they come with a unique twist. They are statues, and they only come to life if you are in open combat within a certain range. This also brings the old school stealth of Assassin's Creed back to the forefront. If you remain undetected and stealth kill an enemy literally next to the Colossi, then they will remain as statues. However, decide to go in all gung-ho, then you could get overpowered by up to 2 of these guys and other soldiers, which quickly becomes a recipe for disaster. Other really nice additions are the opportunity to forge new legendary Isu weapons, collect various awesome armor sets such as the Armor of the Fallen and the Armor of the Dikastes, along with various other Isu Myrmidon sets and weapons. Well guys, those are all my thoughts on why I believe that the Fate of Atlantis DLC for Assassin's Creed Odyssey is great. If you enjoyed the video, then please make sure you leave a like, head over to InstallationX and subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications. Also, don't forget to comment down below on your thoughts on the Fate of Atlantis DLC and share the video around to help the channel get some recognition. You can follow me and the channel over on Twitter at installation_ix, capital I, capital X. And as always, I'm Sykes, and for all things Xbox, stay tuned to InstallationX. Bye guys.